in Japan region. I spend a lot of time helping customers and partners and channel understand a very daunting world and a complex world around cybersecurity. I'm very passionate about data and privacy of your information. And we work in a very complex world, as everyone knows. And that world has obviously changed significantly in the last 2 weeks. Obviously prior to that, but certainly now with everyone working from home, it's a very, very big challenge. So today I wanted an opportunity, and thanks for the opportunity, to talk a little bit about this kind of human nature-proof security. So we're going to be spending a little bit of time talking about some of the tips and techniques that you can help your employees or your customers or your third-party suppliers be more secure in a complex world, as well as obviously more productive when everybody is now having to work from home. All right, so let me get into it. So I think, you know, the construct around zero trust is something that a lot of people speak about all the time. We hear about the zero trust and zero trust all the time, zero trust architectures and frameworks. I think it's got to start there as an attitude. So I'm seeing a huge shift now in organizations around adopting zero trust frameworks, almost as if it was like we were talking about project management, agile type methodologies sort of a few years ago, right? Where that was the kind of the project management or the Scrum agile techniques from a DevOps perspective, but now obviously from a security perspective, it's all about the zero trust. And the obvious thing around zero trust is just never trust anything, and you've got to always verify everything at every given stage of your technology stack. So it's pretty straight. Nothing is ever trusted. No one is trusted by default. This includes people inside your organization, outside your organization. It includes your third-party suppliers, your channel, your customers, everybody. There is no trust anywhere. The perimeter doesn't exist. We all know that. We all work in security. Insider vulnerabilities, though, are still the greatest threat that we see. That's backed up by a lot of research, whether it's insider threats or bad actor malicious users internally. It depends on your perception about what insiders are doing, but certainly people will just do stupid things. So we heard a great, for those who attended the previous session, talking about phishing campaigns and what's happening now in the world around COVID-19 is, the reality is that bad actors are now targeting vulnerable people. So people will still click on things they're not meant to, and it's our job, obviously, from a security perspective, to be able to provide them for the security around that. So there are a few assumptions around zero trust. I think we always, I think probably most of us understand this. I'll get through this fairly quickly, but as I said, this is the attitude we need to be adopting. So always verifying, always validating your access, your credentials, your capability, your authentication, which I'll spend a bit more time on just now, and then also the selective visibility. Do you really need to give everybody access to everything in your organization? We need to have a little bit of privileged access going into organizations now. These are sort of things you need to be thinking about. So a little bit on then what BlackBerry does. So BlackBerry, is an organization that's pivoted to software and security. We're a $1 billion cybersecurity company as a pivot from what we used to do in the old days around hardware and phones and stuff. So we've now bridged this gap, and we've pivoted as a company to provide for this zero trust mechanism, basically around zero trust approaches. What the IT security team wants, everything needs to be notified, not trusted. Whereas the balance that we see now, and the challenge is that with what the end users are looking for is a zero touch experience. To put this into perspective, why is it that I come home from my work in the good old days a few weeks ago, and I get access to my home network, which I'm at all the time? It's a zone of trust. I authenticate to it. I've got a VPN which wraps everything around it, for example, and yet I've still got a key and a 16-digit passcode to get access to some behind the firewall resource, right? It's ridiculous. If I'm in the office, I can just do that because I'm already pre-authenticated. I'm trusted as a network from a perimeter perspective. So what end users are looking for is this zero touch experience. Single sign-on, zero sign-on, passwordless capabilities, potentially leveraging things like certificates, etc. So always the zero trust thing is this balance between what the security team expect you to implement and what the end users are asking for today. This balance is more and more important, especially with the current situation we're in the world today. It is very, very difficult to get this balance right. We are being approached on a daily basis by security teams who've had to deploy out a remote working solution and are coming to us pulling their hair out because they are so terrified about leaking corporate data on personally enabled devices, whether it's a mobile device or their home laptop. How can you ensure the integrity of your corporate data for your end users, still providing them with this ability to carry on and do work, right? So you've got to have this balance. It's a really, really difficult thing to get right today. So here's a little video that I'll just play just to put it into perspective. It's not long, but it'll give you some construct around being what it means to be, a bit of human realities for us all.
My password is password. When I travel, I'm always losing my phone. Have you seen my phone?
I used to send company IP over personal file sharing apps. I mean, I still do.
In this next slide, you can see stronger than this. I use security workarounds. So do I. It's time for smarter security from BlackBerry. Designed for employee mistakes and well-intentioned workarounds. BlackBerry Security. It's human nature proof.
My password.
Okay, so well-intentioned mistakes and workarounds, right? That happens all the time. We're seeing that, as we know. So, the days of people putting passwords and post-it notes are probably coming to an end, depending on which organization you work in. But still, we have issues where we're leaving devices on trains. We are leaving devices behind wherever we go. We are using the same password for every single thing. We don't have multi-factor authentication mechanisms in place for, critical infrastructure access. There's lots and lots of challenges that we have still out there from a security perspective where the human nature element of this is very difficult. So this next slide now starts to bring together, hopefully for you, for the audience, and I'll switch gears just now around this zero trust architecture, right? So we talk about these 4 different pillars. So when you look at, for example, in remote working scenarios, I would challenge you to be having conversations with your IT team and your organization and your C-level to look at different elements of how are you, for example, securing access to your corporate applications, right? So applications, what are you doing from a people perspective? How are you securing your people? How are you making sure that they are safe? How are you deploying mechanisms out so they can still get access to the information that they need to be productive behind the firewall or in cloud-based applications? What devices, for example, are you now letting access into your organization? Have you now had to roll out a fully blown BYOD or bring your own laptop type scenario just for the end users working from home to now be able to get back access into their systems? Are those devices secured? Are they patched? Do you have security on those devices? For example, things like containerization and effective boxing. How are you ensuring that those devices are not being compromised by malware injections or phishing attacks, etc.? How are you ensuring that malicious URL sites that are now sent through via some sort of COVID-19 phishing campaign are not being clicked on and being stopped at the end user's device? And then obviously around the network, right? So the network's a big challenge now, right? So suddenly we've sent everybody out to go and work from home, and yet we're still expecting the same level of capability, security, integrity for that network for end users and applications and their devices to be able to gain access to work resources. That's a very, very big challenge, right? So what are some of the tools and techniques that we can put in place to allow for users still to be productive and yet still get access to information? A good example of that is VPNs, right? So we're customers who are having to go out and deploy VPNs left, right, and center now. But that might not be the best way to do it, because that with itself brings scalability, it brings congestion. Often it's a very, very big challenge for organizations. And they just weren't built for this, right? We didn't expect suddenly within 3 weeks that the whole world will be working from home suddenly. So one of the things with this current situation I'm working on is I'm encouraging people to think about this as, is it a challenge or is it an opportunity, right? So obviously it's a challenge, right? We get that the world has changed probably for a very long time, and we're going to need to adapt to this challenge, right? So here at BlackBerry, what we've been doing is working very hard to help organizations get over the hump of this hurdle as we face it now, but more importantly, to make sure that they've got a robust security story for the world that exists beyond tomorrow. So thinking of this balance between challenge or opportunity is a very, very important construct. As I previously said, I'd encourage you to be having conversations with your teams about what is the future like for us, right? Do we want to, are we all going to go just onto Google Meetings or Hangouts or Zoom? I mean, is that just the reality? Are we now looking at other SaaS-based apps like Office 365-based apps with Teams? There are lots of different tools out there, and some of them have suddenly become quite prevalent just for people to interact with each other, right? We're seeing lots of things around YouTube live streaming, for example, Facebook live streaming for gyms, etc. And that's all okay, right? Because that content isn't secure. I mean, it doesn't need to be secure because it's not corporate, but what happens if you're doing that from a corporate perspective? What happens if your users are now starting to share information and live streaming over a platform that isn't necessarily secure, and people can still get access to either that content or potentially more importantly, get access to the content to use it against you? And these are some of the challenges we're seeing today. So I encourage you all, if you're in this space, especially from a remote working perspective, to have these wide open questions and check what vendors you're working with at the moment to be able to get them right. So I'll just go through 3 tactics, I think, for you to look at. The previous guys spent 45 minutes talking about 10 tactics. I'm just going to do 3. So hopefully put it into perspective, right? So first of all, I reckon what you need to be doing, or what we think at BlackBerry, is have a look at how you're securing your work applications. Okay, how are you securing your access to your email, your documents, your content, etc. is obvious. What are you doing to allow users to edit work content? If they're editing that stuff outside from a work perspective, how are they getting that back into the office? How is that information, that data in transit, how is that information being secured? What programs do you have in place for data loss prevention for your applications? Stopping users just doing stupid things like copying and pasting some information from an app and then putting that into something which is, a non-authenticated or non-approved IT application or experience. So what DLP prevention in place? And then also, what security controls have you got in place, right? How are you authenticating your users? How are you making sure you're drilling down into who has access to which systems? And suddenly now, because we needed to open up everything from a remote working perspective, how are we just checking that the security controls for all people now getting access to our corporate information, they've got the right levels of security that are required? Okay, so first is the applications. The second is the operating system, which is really important. Okay, so endpoint protection on those devices is mega important. Patching clearly is an important tactic, but it's not going to stop the latest zero-day malware from getting executed on the endpoint, is it? You're going to have unsupported operating systems potentially trying to get access to company information. You can't patch for stupidity. So having unstructured corporate access across a wide range of different devices which you don't necessarily control or own is a very big challenge. So have a look at endpoint protection technologies that exist. Obviously, BlackBerry has a very good one, which I'll go through a little bit more but later on. But certainly looking at protecting the operating system is really, really important at this stage. And then the last one is around the network access, right? Your authentication programs, your single sign-on capabilities, VPN, your password processes, stopping restricted apps from accessing information that they don't necessarily need to have access to. And it's basically the premises around protecting corporate data. So have a look at vendors that are out there which can help you with encryption, advanced encryption and cryptography capabilities, right? So securing all of your information on the endpoint at rest in a container, for example, or in a sandbox of some description, or a secured application, as well as providing end-to-end security of all the data that's traversing the internet. So 3 very simple things to get right. Have a look at the apps, the operating system, and then obviously the access and the network that they're getting this from. So again, another video just to put it into some concepts of, from a working from home perspective, of some of the tools and technologies now that we have available to help organizations get through this world. So one of the things we can do from a BlackBerry perspective with our unified endpoint management platform is to provide for compliance checkings around being able to just the simple things like running antivirus type technologies on your endpoint. So if you do that, we will check that and we'll have a compliance statement just which says basically if you do have something running, in this case, we've got Cylance Protect running on this device. If you're trying to get access to a secure container, that will then invoke compliance and check that you've got antivirus running, and then it will say that yes, you do, and you'll then log in, And this is now giving you access straight to all your corporate information through a secured enclave, which is running as a secured browser, which is something we call BlackBerry Desktop. And even within that container, if we see files we don't like, we will be able to quarantine those files pre-execution. So they won't be able to run on that endpoint, even inside or even outside the container. Doesn't matter. So let me just go through to the next slide. Let me just go through. There we go. All right. So a little bit on one little buzzword. I just wanted to switch gears. Just talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So we know that this is a huge buzzword. So I'd encourage you to qualify your vendors very carefully around their capabilities of machine learning and AI, and really question them what benefit it brings to the end users, especially in this current state that we find ourselves now. So over time, this has evolved significantly. And from a BlackBerry perspective, we've invested in 2019 with both investing in AI around with the Silence acquisition, as well as looking at AI technologies and constructs within we can do from a mobile perspective. And we believe that now, AI or modern AI is the way to be able to help with this challenge that end users face, where it's just too easy for them to get stuff wrong. It's too complicated. They expect you as an end organization to get it right for them. But being able to do that statically with policies that are pushed down to either the endpoint or the app or a device or a phone or a laptop is far too old school. There is no way that you can scale to the changes that you need to do, which is why AI is being invested in certainly from a BlackBerry perspective and also in the wider industry to be able to help you with adapting your security policy effectively on the fly. Now, one of the things we can do, and we have now helping organizations, is with something we call intelligent security, which is effectively being able to look at a machine learning framework or a model where we bring in lots of different input mechanisms for that user or that device. Things like where you are, your location, how you use the device, how do you swipe on it, how hard do you push on the fingerprint, how do you open up emails, for example, what applications do you use, where are you gaining access to that information, what network. Am I at my home network, for example, which is a trusted network because I'm here all the time, so it's kind of trusted, or am I out at a unsecured public Wi-Fi hotspot somewhere, or a coffee shop, for example, right? And then time and usage anomalies, right? I'm based here in Australia. I'm speaking to you from Sydney. What happens if suddenly my device turned up and tried to authenticate and try to open up access to information in Singapore in 5 hours' time? That would be physically impossible from a geo-velocity perspective. So having a look at how those sort of things impact the security of a device. And then with that information, we create a framework and a risk score on that device. And then we can do different things to it. We can either say, okay, we grant you access. We trust that you've still got access to that. Or maybe we'll just issue you a challenge. We'll just say, oh, I'm not quite 100% certain about that. I'm just going to ask you to re-authenticate. Multi-factor authentication, maybe we'll say, well, that iPhone you're just trying to get access to, we're not 100% certain about that. Let's just ping another device you have. We're just going to ask you to authenticate again to get access to a work resource. And then the powerful thing is that we can adapt the policy on devices now in real time. So with AI, we can change the security policy up or down depending on where you are or what you're doing or the time of day or whatever other input mechanism is. And of course, with AI, we can alert and remediate, stop access to information, etc., etc. So this is a very quick little demo video of what that looks like. So in the world, so this is somebody on a tablet device getting access to their corporate emails through BlackBerry Work. They're at the office. They're in a trusted location. What is the time of day? We have a risk score of green. In other words, it's a low risk. And we're happy for this user to just continue to work as per usual. But what happens if things change and they started to go on the move, right? So suddenly that user's location changes, the network they're accessing the information from changes. We might just say, I'm not 100% certain about that. We'll just change your risk score and we'll just ask you for another quick authentication. So you might have just popped into the public a coffee shop somewhere. You probably shouldn't have in this day and age, but if you had, then we'll just ask you for a challenge. And if you authenticate successfully, then obviously you carry on working as needed. And that's an example of intelligent security working to adapt the policy for an end user. And then this final use case, quite simple, to see that this person has moved into an area where we don't trust. There's a reason why we don't trust it. It's in a location or a zone that we don't like. It's accessing information from a network we don't trust. And in that case, what we've now said is, okay, we're going to restrict your access to that corporate information until you move into an area of better risk, and then we'll obviously we can change the policy for you. Okay, and then one of my final sort of little videos I'm going to show here is just a reality of what we can do from an end user perspective now with intelligent security. So, as I mentioned previously, we have app DNA capabilities where we can learn the way you use your device. So in this case here, a user's using their devices per usual. You might be in a work from home scenario, or you might be out and about at a meeting, for example. And we've got a trust score built into this device. The way that you use the device all the time is we know that you are who you are. You put your device down on desk, a minute later, somebody else picks up your device. Obviously, in this case, it's a female, possibly a coworker or a malicious inside user. And she's now starting to browse that device. It's obviously unlocked, so it's only a minute timeout, and looking for information. She's having a look at my calendar. Now she's going to go over to my emails and have a look at potentially information such as attachments, for example. Now you can see on the left-hand side, the trust score has dropped down. So we now know this user doesn't look right. So with that, as the trust score drops, the AI engine will kick in straight away and we'll say, we don't trust it. In this case, the example there was, we're just going to lock you out. So that's an example of what we call continuous authentication. And it's something that we can do today. So have a think about some of the capabilities that you're hearing about from an industry perspective, and think about solutions that will allow for your users to be more productive and more capable. Okay. So quickly to, just to start wrapping up here, I've got a few more slides to get through, so I'm going to try and speed this up. I think, some of the techniques that I mentioned previously around, investing in AI and machine learning, and to give you some construct around what we do with that now around the evolution for, I suppose, the EDR market, the endpoint detection and response, which is post-execution now to more, a future state, which is pre-execution using AI to be able to secure, applications on devices, and devices themselves is obviously very, very important. And that's what that's the future that we work in. And kind of the way to explain it, obviously I'm in Australia, so I'll use some Australian construct for this. From a machine learning and an AI perspective, looking at some of the elements here is what we start to look at and map from a file perspective, or from an executable, or it might be a memory exploit, or a it could be something like a weaponized Word document or some sort of macro-based capability. We've started to map different elements, or what we call effectively fundamentals of, or features of a machine learning mathematical model. So we know, for example, in this kangaroo, the ears aren't hanging actually. What does the eye roundness look like, etc. Now, once we mapped all that, we can map that to other things like emus and koalas, right? So in emus and koalas, we can see the ears hanging also. It doesn't actually have ears, for example, but the koala is a little bit out of kilter for that. The eye roundness is slightly different from an emu compared to a koala, for example. And we now start to match all these attributes and build a mathematical model around different features and functions for that, what we call a feature vector for that piece of information. Now, the way to think about this, what we've done is we've moved that koalas, emus, and kangaroos into files, into bad stuff that goes on. Mainly bad stuff, so known malware, unknown malware, zero-day attacks, known good software. Millions and millions and millions of lines of software have been built into a mathematical model, which helps us to create this, right? So we can now look at an area where we can really, really confidently, with 99.8% certainty, know that if something is a dog or a cat or an emu or etc. Now, to put that into bad stuff or into software, this is what we do from an AI perspective with Cylance, Protect, and with Optics, right? So we can now map, and we have mapped from an AI and machine learning perspective, what is known good software, for example, Microsoft Office software, but what are known malware, what looks like kind of WannaCry type things, or different Trojans that run out there. What the AI and machine learning engine is all about at BlackBerry. And we use that now to deploy down to a device from an agent and continuously protect and continuously help, endpoints be more secure in a very, very complicated world, which is what we've got today, where I'm having organizations coming to me really struggling with this notion of having to allow people to work from home on a device which is potentially not secure. So these are some of the things that we're doing now from a BlackBerry perspective. And I think I'm getting really close to time. So I can see Jeffrey just popped up on my screen there. So hey, Jeffrey. So I'll just finish this off. So basically, if you're working in this space and you're really struggling with this space around remote working and some of the tool sets that you need for your end users, especially with security and data, come and have a look at some of the capabilities that BlackBerry have. Very happy to do demos. We've now run this out free. There's a 60-day free license for all of the stuff that I've been showing now. I had a customer in India last weekend deploy from 1,000 users of nothing, remote working, within 48 hours, fully up and running on a secured, containerized solution to get access to their corporate information. So it can be done very, very quickly. And obviously, we're very happy to help answer any questions on this or any of the other remote working initiatives. So,
okay.
Thank you very much.
JJ, to give applause, can everyone joining this particular webinar give a little icon applause to JJ so that he doesn't feel lonely, because I haven't seen a lot of interactions in chat things before. So everyone, please give a warm welcome. No, not welcome. Thank you, applause to JJ for this presentation. We do have a question, but JJ, I just listened to the entire presentation. There is this particular presentation is so detailed and it is very informative.
Yeah.
And for people like me, a number of IT people as well, the questions, I don't even know how to answer this. Okay, it sounds like there's a fair amount of expertise required to set up the unified enterprise. Endpoint management.
Yep.
If I don't actually have, I have zero experience. I have, on endpoint management or anything like that. And how long would that take for me to get yourself to get this done?
Yeah, so good question. So it would depend on possibly two different scenarios. So if you are an existing BlackBerry customer who has UEM today, so some sort of endpoint management platform or EMM or UEM, most customers have got something deployed today to manage their devices or manage their applications. Technologies like this are actually quite easy to deploy. So in this case with BlackBerry, it's just as simple as creating a access key, which you then push down to the endpoints. They install an application that runs on the device, and you can have all your users up and running very quickly. If you're not a BlackBerry current customer, we've got a huge partner ecosystem, SIs and VARs across APAC who are ready to help and are helping all the time with customers getting up and running on this. Today, cloud is prevalent. You can spin this up in cloud in honestly less than 5 minutes. You can have your users and your applications and your devices secured in a very, very quick time frame. So it really isn't difficult to do. On-prem is probably a little bit more complicated because you've got some firewalling and change control stuff. But honestly, in this current scenario, we're seeing just customers just needing to really spin things up very quickly, and most of it's being done in cloud. It's very easy to do. So.
What about desktop? So what does the implementations of BlackBerry desktop at the company look like? How complex it is to set up?
So very easy, actually. BlackBerry desktop is basically, as you may remember on the video, it's a secured application which installs on the endpoint. So on Windows 10 or Mac, you just download the application, and then it is secured with UEM. So to get it up is incredibly fast. It will connect to your corporate IT information if you needed to, or it will just punch straight out to cloud. So I've got a lot of customers who do Office 365 for email, for example, which is great, but they still need the security of containerization and data leak prevention on endpoints. So this is a very quick way of being able to do that, even if you're Office 365.
Okay. All right. So is there any way to install non-cloud apps inside the BlackBerry desktop container? So most container may have cloud web app, and there's still non-cloud apps.
So is there any way to install non-cloud? Okay, right. Yeah, good question. So this is a very, very big challenge today, right? So how, and I hear this all the time, how do you get applications which are behind your firewall, or it might be native applications that are sitting in Google Play or the App Store? How do you get those secured onto an endpoint, but still provide for secure connectivity of that application, as well as the security, the encryption of the data on the application? And we partner with a company called Wingu to do that. It's effectively, for those who know what a VDI type solution is, remote access VDI capabilities. And the Wingu is very clever at being able to populate your applications and put them into a container, which is all secured by BlackBerry. So yes, we can help with that, but it is quite a challenge today.
Right, okay. Is there any other particular questions that the audience like to ask? Because I know it's very detailed, that presentation. It's pretty hard to pinpoint. I almost just immersed myself into your presentation. But one thing I saw, like I said, anyone have any questions, please pop in and ask questions. One thing I saw in your presentation, you were saying, like, if I picked up my phone, I put it down, and my colleague, which is, let's just say, not the same feature as me, and it picked it up, and you can lock it up straight away. Is that what it is?
Yeah, exactly. So this is this terminology, what we call continuous authentication. So the continuous authentication from a zero trust perspective is effectively we don't trust anyone. So you have to continuously authenticate to your device. Now, if you've got Face ID, that's easy, right? So you're always looking to continuously authenticate. But what happens if we don't use Face ID and you pick up my device, my iPhone, and I don't know who you are and don't trust you, right? So how quickly can I lock that device, or how quickly can I remove the work data of that device in that type of a scenario? Okay. And that's a very, what I call that's the security team's way of thinking. Like, they just want everything to be locked down. But from an end user perspective, we want to make sure that we're adapting policy to help end users be productive, especially in this time now. So a better way or better approach is to say, hang on, I'm not 100% certain of what's going on this device. I'm just going to challenge you. Can you just re-authenticate with your thumbprint, for example? If you are who you are, all good. You can still carry on and get access to your device.
All right. Yeah. I'm going to make a little joke here. I would love to basically use that. I think a lot of my wife will basically get really mad. They can't access my phone. Anyway, thank you so much for the very detailed presentation. Oh, can you share any cases of how customer in a certain vertical have used the free license offer, and what are the onboarding experiences like? You can read the questions, sir.
Yeah, that's easy. Yes, that's a good question. So the onboarding experience is very easy. And we can share later on as part of this presentation anyway, the links to where you can go and get yourself signed up. But basically, as a new customer, literally sign up for the free trial. You will then get given an account in BlackBerry, and that will then spin up for you. You choose a cloud instance, or you get the software to install it on-prem, or you can do it hybrid if you want to. Most customers at the moment just spin up a cloud tenant, and then the access and the information is all part of your cloud tenant. We then provide you with a huge amount of information with tips and tricks, videos, documentation, end user cheat sheets, all of that information that you need to get up and running. That's from an end user perspective. The best way is probably just get in contact with one of our partners, one of our SIs or VARs, or even my team, the sales engineering team. Literally within 15 minutes, show you how to get up and running and get you going in a very, very short frame of space here. So very easy to do. Okay,
looks like you guys are prepared to basically go live. Right. Before we end here, JJ, is there any last tips that you'd like to share? And we also basically like to thank all our audience to be patiently stay on board until this morning to listen to all the presentations right before lunch. So any last tips, JJ?
I think, yeah, I'll just say a last tip is that we're living in unprecedented times, right? So we've never really been through this, and this remote working is one thing. But I guess, I shared 3 tips in the beginning just around looking at the security of your applications, your endpoints and your network, right? Also think about the people. Ask them, what are some of the challenges that they have today in their current working environment that we can help them be more productive. Because if we don't do that, what end users will do is they will bypass security controls, right? They will start using, unsolicited file sharing mechanisms, or they'll start going back to old school mechanism of downloading apps and just hoping that they're secure, right? Hope is not a strategy. So ask your end users, what are some of the challenges they've got now? And then let's work together to build frameworks of security for those end users. That's the most important thing at the moment. So
right.
Okay.
Thank you. Great insight. And again, this is all about, human nature. And I now understand the whole presentation is you basically take out all the technical part that you do it yourself, and you basically make our life a lot easier. Thank you so much to be part of this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, please do log back in again at 2 p.m. for our last sessions for today. Enjoy your lunch. We'll call back to you in the room. Thank you, JJ. Thank you so much again.
Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.